Good evening and welcome to this journey through my book, God's Roadmap. We're in chapter 2, and in this episode, we're going to start with the overview of the book of Revelation that's given by the book of Revelation itself. And so I'm going to jump right in, and the Lord tells John what to write. And it says, as we start to look at the mystery of this book of Revelation, it's helpful to see that Jesus gave John clear instructions on how this book would be laid out. It is found in Revelation 1:19. It says, write these things which thou hast seen, and which are, in the things which will take place hereafter. And John writes out the things which thou hast seen in the first chapter of the book of Revelation, gives us details of how this prophetic book was given to him and what Jesus revealed about himself initially. We see the things that are in chapters 2 and 3, which were the 7 letters to the 7 churches, and the 7 churches were the things that are. Now, they are in the past now, those 7 churches. Although there's a point to be made about those 7 churches. In the 7 letters to the 7 churches, in each letter, he that has an ear to hear, listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. The clear implication of this is that although these letters all had local applications to the church in which it was written, we all are expected to read and understand and make any adjustments in our lives that these letters and the Spirit makes us aware of. I've heard gifted men speak on these 7 letters, and they detail how the Lord has cryptically laid out 7 periods of church history through the order in which these 7 churches are addressed. The first letter describes the first period of church history, which started the day that the Father poured out the Spirit on the believers on the day of Pentecost. That was the first church period. The 7th letter accurately describes the church period in which we live in right now. I totally believe that the Lord intended to do this, and it shows us that he had a plan, that nothing that has happened has caught him by surprise. The fact that God's prophecies have been 100% accurate in the past gives us the confidence that these prophecies are also 100% correct, but yet not fulfilled. The layout of these 7 letters proves the divine origin of the entire text of Revelation to the readers today. This brings us to my second nagging problem that I have with the way that I've been taught Revelation. The things which shall be hereafter are clearly seen starting in chapter 4. It uses the same wording in the first verse. It says, after this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as if it were a trumpet talking to me, which said, come up hither, come up hither. And I will show you the things which must take place hereafter. So you come up here, and I'll show you the things that must take place hereafter. when he was called up there, they hadn't taken place yet. Of course, he lived 2,000 years ago, but that point when he was taken up, they still hadn't taken place in that period of time in which he was taken to be shown. In other words, if the church had been raptured when John was taken up, the hereafter would have already taken place. But he said he was going to show them the things that would happen hereafter. So he arrived before those things had happened so that he could see them unfolding before his eyes. It's a valid point, and it should be heeded. This point that John being taken up was not the rapture of the church. Just because the voice sounded like a trumpet doesn't mean it was the last trump of God. And so, that is when God called John up in the point in the text which the church will be raptured is not seen. They say the church has been raptured at that point in the text, and the church age is over at that point. But that is not spoken of by John or the text at this point. It's not said by John. And why would he not say that? And when I went up, 10,000 times 10,000 people went up with me in the clouds to join the Lord in the sky. Why didn't he say that? Because it didn't happen when he was called up to heaven. That's why he didn't say that. No mention. You would think of all the things that John described, he would describe that clearly if when he got called up to heaven, that all the saints got called up with him. He would not have omitted it. And I have to say that I wrote of it here that if John had written about this, that it would not have changed whether it would have been a secret or not. So the question that should be asked is, why would the Lord hide such an important fact? If the church was raptured at this point, why isn't it clearly portrayed in the text? If not, it's not as if anyone could possibly hang a date on the beginning of chapter 4. Chapter 4 begins, and if that were the time when the church was going to be raptured, nobody would know when that point in time was in the future, the date that we look forward to being called up to heaven. You can't look at the text and say, oh, that is August the 21st of 2021 or 2022. Since that date went, we missed the rapture, huh? It wouldn't be as if we could do that. We couldn't hang a date on it. So it's not like it would have to be hidden, because there's no important event there that you could hang a date on. So it would still be entirely secret. So there was no reason for John not to write of it. And John clearly said, and the Lord told me, don't write about this or don't write about that. I saw this thing. I saw this event when I got taken up to heaven, but the Lord said, see that you write about it not. He said that about some of the things, what was written on the thigh of Jesus. Don't write that. You know, the four living creatures uttered something that he didn't write. Uh, the Lord knows how to disseminate the information to us, and it's not here. He didn't write about it because he didn't see it. It's that simple. It's very simple. It's not as if we need to be rocket scientists to see this fact. It's not there. And so the focus of all the peoples, angels, and beings that are seen in heaven with the Father, Jesus, in the Spirit until the Lord's second coming, in Revelation 19, I'm focusing on those groups of people as I go through this study right now. That was my focus in 1990. Actually, it was in 2005. That was my focus, and it's still my focus. These groups of people that are seen. And the first group that John sees in heaven when he arrives, he says, I saw, and this is in Revelation 4:4. This is when he arrives, and around the throne were 24 seats, and upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. You know, he must have seen himself. He probably didn't even, well, he would have recognized himself. He would have recognized himself. But he saw the 24 elders sitting around the throne, clothed in white. And they had on their heads crowns of gold. We weren't told here who these elders are. But in Matthew 19:28, we see that 12 of these thrones were reserved for Jesus' disciples. So Jesus said to them, Surely I say to you that in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. The other 12, we're not told who will occupy them, but they will most likely be going to the selected from the who's who of the Old Testament saints, probably one elder from each tribe, but like I said, we aren't told, and so we can't leave it, or we must leave it as unknown. When we're not told of a fact in the Bible, we can say, I think, and I could say, I think Moses will be sitting on one of those thrones. I could say, I think King David will be sitting on one of those thrones. And I don't know how I would be wrong in saying either one of those, but we aren't told. The Lord has assigned these, even as Jesus told his disciples, I can't let you sit at my right hand and my left hand. The Father has assigned those seats, and it's not for me to give. All right? So let's let the Father do his work. So we see the 12 thrones. We see the 24 elders sitting around the throne of God. And at this point in the book, which is before any judgments were released on the earth, the rest of the saints are only seen in Revelation 5, verse 8. By their prayers, it says, and when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before him the Lamb who sits on the throne, and every one of them had harps and bowls full of odors or incense, some translations say, which are the prayers of the saints. And so the rest of the saints are only seen by their prayers going up to heaven, and the bowls were held by the elders. Their prayers were going up as incense before God. That's the only reference to the rest of the saints. And they are called saints. They aren't called the church. There were 7 letters to 7 churches, but the individuals in the church have been and always will be called saints. So when people say the church is not mentioned anymore in the book of Revelation, doesn't mean the church isn't there, because every saint is part of the church. They're individuals in the church, not a building. And the church is the body of Christ. And if you see the head of the church is still there. It's amazing how people will take and twist what they see to make it say what they want it to say. And they have preconceived notions of what is going on, and yet the Lord has not said. So the only other occupants seen in heaven at that point are what the NIV Bible refers to as the 4 living creatures and the angels. In Revelation 4:6 says, around the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind, and the first was like a lion, and the second was like a calf, and the third was like the face of a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. And Revelation 5:11 says, and I beheld and heard a voice of many angels around the throne and the beasts and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. And when I looked at this point, when I looked at this in the past, I was very curious to why the rest of the saints are listed with them here. The amount of those there then is over 100 million, which is what 10,000 times 10,000 is. I have heard that this list includes all the saints, and this will be through the pre-tribulational teachers, but 2 things are clearly noted. The amount of the elders has been listed at 24 3 times before this, and again 24 before the paragraph. 2 times they were referred to as just elders, but it is the same context in the paragraph as listing them as 24 elders. The second problem is when the scripture lists all the saints as elders, it wouldn't. It wouldn't list all the saints as elders. It has never happened before because we don't all fill that role. 24 is 24. All the angels and the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders equal 100 million. And there is a number for this group, but there's a group that is going to show up when we gather together tomorrow. It is without number and can only be the church. no church or no group will show up in heaven apart from the church that's number will be innumerable. No group is going to be saved out of the great tribulation. Those that were not saved and yet will give their life to the Lord will not outnumber the church. Numerically, it's impossible, especially since the book of Revelation in no place shows any large-scale revival. As a matter of fact, it only shows, and they harden their hearts against God. That's what it says. I didn't write those words. God had John write those words. John would have written clearly, and there was a large revival, and many people gave their lives to the Lord. It didn't happen. It did not happen. Now, many people will not receive the mark of the beast, I believe, through the ministry of the angels and ministering spirits that will warn them about the mark of the beast, but they will not outnumber the church. So we're going to talk about that group tomorrow, and I hope that you will join me as we continue down this journey of God's roadmap. His rapture is coming. We need to be ready. And Jesus says, pray that you will be counted worthy to escape all these judgments that are coming upon the earth. Pray that for you, and pray that you'll continue to join me in this journey. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.